What?
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party.
Reality?
Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda. Like, I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing this morning? It is currently 9:09 in the morning Central Time, 10:09 on the Eastern Time on this October 28th. My name is Mr. Henry. Listen, you in particular, I'm pointing to you through this camera here. I appreciate you. We all appreciate you. We believe in you. We know what you're doing out there. We know how you're making moves, fighting for liberty, fighting for the good causes, growing as a person, things like that. That's what we do here on this program. All right, we try and challenge each other a little bit. We try and disagree. We try and have like calm, cordial dialogue and exchange of ideas and good old school classical rhetoric. And what we used to do as a great species before we hit 2020 and everything just blew up in our faces is what we're trying to get back to here in Real News. All right, so join with us. Come along for the ride, if you will. I don't know. Have some fun with us, man. That's what we do. Hashtag Real News. Hashtag Real Friends. My name is Mr. Henry. We have Zig back here. He's making some coffee. He'll be on with us in a second. David Shine Thompson out there in East Tennessee. Let's start real quick, and then I'll get to David Shine Thompson. Greatest audience in the nation appreciation segment here. Just tell us how you're doing with stuff, man. What are you struggling with? What books are you reading right now? What philosophy you're going through? Do you need prayer concerns for anything? Anybody you know needs prayer concerns? Small businesses that are trying to innovate and just, I don't know, stay alive or something like that. Tell us. We'll bring them on this program. We'll interview them. We'll get the word out. What's going on in your community, by the way? Wherever you're from. If you're not from Tennessee, if you're outside of this state in another state, if you're in a different part of the world, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. What's the biggest thing on your mind right now? With that being said, let's go to David Shine Thompson. David, buddy, how are you doing this morning, man?
Doing real well. I got one phrase for today. Love is a battlefield, okay? Love is a battlefield. Yes, in fact, that goes along with the comments that I'm in here with the comments with our group already. Good morning, everybody. It's raining. Looks like it's going to do that all day here in Knoxville, so make sure you grab your umbrella or galoshes. Don't drive too fast. We did this whole intro for the show earlier because we thought we were live, but we really weren't. How funny is that? I don't even mind telling you that right now. I like talked for like 5 minutes, and Grant was like, I don't think we're live. I'm like, oh, man. And we weren't.
That's why the intro was so good, though, man, because we got
it was so smooth. Because we got to practice. We're talking about practice. That's what we're talking about today.
There he is. Practice?
I'm also like super hype because Alex Jones was on Joe Rogan yesterday, and it was hilarious. It was so good.
Yeah.
And there was this huge worry, you know, that like not just Alex Jones, but people who are like not Miley Cyrus and Matthew McConaughey are not going to be able to get on Joe Rogan. That was the worry. There was a worry that, like, unless you were, like, this big star or, you know, there was this approved list or whatever, you know, that was the worry with the new Joe Rogan. You mean
after the move to Spotify, right?
Yeah, because they took down, like, 12 or 13. They took down the Milo episode, a couple of the old Alex Jones episodes. It's not just about Alex Jones. What it means is, like, if he's willing to have Alex Jones on, he'll have anybody on. You know, so, and it was hilarious. Alex Jones got tanked, like he got kind of drunk. It was funny. And then Jones is, and then what's his name? Joe Rogan's doing sober October, and Alex was getting so mad that he wouldn't. He's like, "Why aren't you drinking with me? I'm drinking, and you're not drinking right now." You know? Anyway, but I also wanted to remind everybody we got like just a couple more days of early voting. Like it's Wednesday. I think it's done on Friday. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But I think it's Friday. If it's Saturday, I don't know. Here, I'll look it up while we're doing the show and double check. Make sure here in Knox County, even though I think it's the same across the state. But I'll check in the Nashville area and the Knox area. But anyway, good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well.
Hey, and with that being said, let me hit some comments real quick, and then I'll introduce our boy Zig, and then we'll go into the first topic for today, which is real news, fake news. You'll see that at the bottom of the screen here, but I have an interesting little twist on real news, fake news, so stick around for that here in just a second. Kelly said, good morning, Real News family. Man, that Board of Health meeting in Knoxville on Monday was a joke. We have some clips pulled up from that. We'll get to that story here in just a second. Shine said he thought it went well. I'm sure Stimpy would disagree, Kelly said. And then Stimpy asked a question in here, said he needs an honest opinion. Was I justified in disrupting the meeting, or was I just being a fool? I don't know what he's referencing. I got someone that does know what Stimpy's referencing. Give him a response there. Jessica says Jessica's dealing with her own stuff out in Pennsylvania way. I'm telling you. She says Mayor and City Hall moved our budget hearing and hasn't/won't release the date. I know that game, Jessica. We all know that game far too well. Councilwoman Beth let me know this morning she has no idea what is happening. So frustrating. I'll tell you though, as Jessica's talking about this, it makes me slightly nostalgic for younger political days when I'm getting into those local issues for. Maybe not the first time for Jessica, but getting back into them for me for the first time in a long time. It's an enlightening, encouraging experience to know that, you can make change, you can enact change, you can get people to do stuff, you can make local headlines, you can actually see your will being demonstrated across the community. It's a very empowering thing to talk to a congressperson, talk to a council member, talk to anybody that's an elected representative, express your opinion, get a number of people to follow behind you, and then see yourself make headlines the following day, or see some bill passed, or see some resolution pushed through that you're in agreement with. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to blow heads up here or anything. I'm just, in this day and age in 2020 where it's difficult to have your voice heard, it can be an empowering thing to get that thing done.
Oh, me and Grant have worked on stuff for long periods of time and never gotten any reward from it. Never got the needle moved an inch. So it is crazy that you can do that kind of stuff in 2020 and you can see some fruit right away.
Matt Burns Facebook said, except the HGH that Rogan. It's okay, fine. And Sean was saying that Joe Rogan's not on anything. Matt said, well, except that HGH. And then Judy said, Congress would have to care about their job first. I presume she's responding to the Real News Fake News headline today, which is this. Legislators worried they may have to legislate if the Supreme Court stops legislating after Justice Barrett's confirmation. More on that in a second. Zig, buddy, how are you doing out in Pennsylvania? I know it's been getting a little bit rocky over the last couple of 24 hours or so, but how's everything going your way, man?
Well, it's not rocky here in Pennsylvania. It's rocky in Philadelphia, and that's more or less, that's not really Pennsylvania. That's part of New York or New Jersey. We don't take any ownership of that place over here.
I love it, dude. Hey, with that being said, Sean, let's jump straight to the Real News Fake News. Here's the interesting little wrinkle.
Real quick, because I messed up, I have to tell everybody, bro. It's actually tomorrow is the last day for early voting in Knox County.
Okay.
I'll put it up on screen so everybody can see it. It says early voting October 14th through the 29th, general election November 3rd. So there you go.
Oh, it's a good thing we gave that update, honestly, because I was thinking it was actually Friday. So no, that's good. It means I gotta get in there. Goodness, or either that or I'm going voting.
It seems like it's the same in Davidson, so that might be the deal. 7 p.m., 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. is the last day tomorrow in Davidson County too. So it might be that way statewide.
All right.
So
there you go.
But check your local county election website or call them to find out what's going on in your county.
Hey, and Shine, if you could, buddy, the Real News Fake News for today. All right. Normally, this is just a headline that I just read off to y'all, and you just have to sort of make sense of it if it's real or fake. I want to add a different wrinkle into this because why not? It's 2020. And I really just kind of am doing an experiment with myself and to some extent others that I won't say anything about. Yeah, but I'm doing an experiment here just to test the realms and test the boundaries of truth itself. What even is truth anymore? You hear it in our intro all the time. I'm really trying to kind of push people into this idea of, look, man, if you don't know, maybe you should do some research, okay? If you really have to ask this question of what objective truth is, then maybe we need to wind this back just a second. Maybe I need to expose the absurdity of what it is that we're looking at. Shine, click on that photo for me real quick. Another Real News Fake News headline. So here's the Real News Fake News for today, okay? This headline that you're now looking at, as opposed to just hearing, we're going to add another sensory sort of variable here. That's the headline. Tell me if this is a real or a fake headline coming out of Fox News. Legislators worried they may have to legislate if the Supreme Court stops legislating after the Justice Barrett confirmation. Legislators are worried that they may have to legislate if the Supreme Court stops legislating after Justice Barrett conversation. Now, that is going to be the main topic we're picking up this morning here. And it's also going to be part of the lesson in humility, which is the title for the program today. Quick aside, These title changes over the last couple of days is a total Zig thing, all right? I think you had a great opinion here. Instead of listing what the topics are, just tell them what the overarching theme is. That's what we do in this program anyways. So let's just deal with the overarching theme, put it out there. It's a lesson in humility today. I think it's been fantastic the last 2 shows we've tried this. And Sean, if you want to go to the national story section, I picked this headline in Real News Fake News in part just to help me prove the point this morning. Now, we're about a day behind of the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation, but it's still relevant, I think, for something much larger than just Amy Coney Barrett. A portion of it's much larger than just than for just her confirmation, because what we're really talking about is the reaction to it and how people have totally lost the plot. I love that British phrase. It fully encompasses where I think a lot of people they've lost the plot on life. On this grand social experiment that we call the United States of America, we've lost the plot. We all used to have at least a tenuous grasp on what it meant to be an American, or some type of basic cursory understanding of what it is we were trying to do here. And we all at least understood to some time, if you want to enact societal change on a large scale, be it in America or be it in Rome or be it in, I don't know, man, any other civilization in all of human history, let's say, arguably, the best way to do it is to argue with your fellow man, convince him or her that you are correct and that they are wrong. And after a very long period of time of doing that, you're good. You can breathe. You can sigh that relief. It's in stone. You cemented it through legislation. That's why we put this thing out on Real News last night. It's getting some good traction. This little statement that just said the following. Imagine a world where societal change doesn't happen through 9 unelected old people, where legislators actually legislate on your behalf. People would be far less worried about losing a Supreme Court seat in that world. The play now for Democrats, as I'm sure you've seen in the hashtag, if you follow such a thing, and I don't advocate that you should, but if you're following these hashtags, it's now the hashtags expand the court or pack the court. And we went over what that is a couple shows back, right? And New Deal stuff coming around, wanting to pack the courts, moving it from 9 to 13 or 9 to 27, or you can hear all kind of different numbers of how many justices will sit on the Supreme Court. And the idea is to dilute the conservative influence and just make it a whole bunch of more liberals so you can continue to legislate through the Supreme Court. And what I'm saying is that is not a representative will of the people. Quite frankly, that takes the entire experiment and flips it on its head. It perverts it. And it makes it a perverse interpretation of what this grand experiment is. And when you start to do that, people lose hope. They lose a sense of meaning. This is what I'm telling y'all. This type of push is not just political. It messes with people's minds. Shine, pull up that first clip here. See SJW's freak out over ACB confirmation. Now, I want to preface, we're going to go through a couple reactions here. And primarily, they're all coming from women. I just couldn't find any from men. I'm not pulling these up to make fun of these women. I'm pulling these up to make the point that if you believe something is a true inherent God-given right, if you believe it's a right in a civilized society, then do something about it. It's not much of a right if you have to rely upon people that disagree with you to maintain that right. And if your entire existence and meaning of life is wrapped up in 9 people that you don't have a say as to whether they get there or not, that is such a fleeting experience. You are always in flux as to whether I exist or I don't exist, whether I have meaning or I don't have meaning. And it can become chaotic and confusing and arguably terrifying for some of these people. So I'm not pulling these up.
Yeah, the thing about mortal gods is they can die, and that can throw your whole mythos into flux, into chaos.
Dude, that was so perfectly said. That's the thing about mortal gods is that they can die. Pull up that first video real quick, Shannon. Again, I'm not trying to make fun of these women. It's helping me prove this point. The first one is get a grip. Play that Twitter video if you want to real quick. This lady here, I mean, you'll obviously see when Shannon's playing this clip here in a second.
Amy Coney Barrett was just confirmed to the Supreme Court. So all those times I said I was queer, oh my God, you guys, that was so funny. And this necklace, a total joke. Oh my God, I was just kidding. All those times I said men don't deserve rights. Oh my God, men are so great. I need a husband to show me how to be an adult, how to function. I'm the dumb woman, no numbers. Everything's
So I can't figure out what she was going for there. Like, I can't figure out if it was a character she was playing. I can't figure out if she was being purposely manic. I don't understand. I don't know if that was actually her. I don't know if she's LARPing and she's just virtue signaling to some.
It was sarcasm, Grant. It was.
Well,
it was.
saying,
it was like an attempt of clapter like sarcasm. So like
weird,
not
though,
in an effort to be funny, but an effort to get people to go, oh, I get what you're saying. I agree. Yeah.
But it started out like, you know, drenched in sarcasm. And at the end, it made this weird twist into sincerity where she started crying about it because she was recognizing the reality of her own, the sincerity rather of her own sarcasm. I can't figure out what she was going from.
What's going on here, Grant, is it's a power grab. Most of these people have figured out if they can complain or cry, they can use that to get people's attention and centralize power around them and their emotions. And that strategy has been wildly effective because of the predominant way in which we communicate now, which is through social media, through video. And that's why I always go back to the importance of reading. If we had text, newspapers, things that people read, books, and that was the social norm for getting knowledge, we wouldn't have these wild outbursts. That wouldn't exist, right?
Shine, play this next one here real quick too. Woman's reaction. It's a Twitter link. Woman's reaction. This one's real short. All right. I mean, you probably can play this in the background while I'm talking. It's you know, it's the TikTokers. It's the kids. She runs in this room and she starts screaming onto a pillow, and she runs out complaining about how she wishes she weren't born with a uterus.
Why did I have to have a freaking uterus?
All right, so this helps prove yet another point of what I'm trying to make today. What she says, why did I have to have a uterus? And the point that she's so subtly trying to get across is that if not for, let's say, but for this legal terms, without the Supreme Court, I have no rights as a woman. That cannot be. That is not the experiment that we're doing here in America. That's not the structure of our government. That is, I don't know another way to say this, but your rights are not that much in flux. You have convinced yourself of a delusion, and it seems like you prefer the delusionary state to what is actually happening. Or it seems like you actually prefer the attention than you could actually do something about it. And I know that may be harsh for some people here, harsh for women watching, harsh for whoever might look at this or read this or hear this 10 years from now. But the point I'm making is, if you do honestly believe that your rights as a woman or your rights as anything we're talking today could possibly be changed on a dime, then please hear what I've been trying to preach on this program and others for arguably 4 solid years now. Go legislate and change something. Convince your fellow man. Cement it in stone so that the Supreme Court doesn't have to legislate for you anymore. They were never meant to begin with. One more here, Sean. It says, the one right underneath that is another Twitter link. Says, everyone except white men. Everyone except white men. This is yet another person who's barricaded themselves in a bathroom, who's about to lament the fact that now everybody is going to lose their inherent God-given fundamental rights to everything. Well, except for white men. I guess because we just put a white man on the Supreme Court. I don't know, man. That's a whole different situation.
Don't mind me. I'm in the bath, but while I'm in here, I got a notification that Amy Coney Barrett was officially confirmed to the Supreme Court. I didn't think I would be this affected by it, but I'm scared. I'm scared for me, other women, people who need help, everyone except white men. So, please vote next week. Let's try to do something.
All right, man. For like a genuine hot take there was a lot of edits. I can just imagine her sitting in the bath till it gets cold and she's pruny and she's like, okay, I've been editing this for like 35 minutes. All right, now I can put it on Twitter.
I'm telling you, man. And again, I don't know any other reaction just to look at some of this stuff as humorous because I feel like this is theater.
Yeah, it's not really like Grant. It's beyond humor. It's
right.
It's not really funny. Like as we're watching these, I'm like, this is just so sad. Like it's pathetic looking. Like I'm embarrassed for him. And you know me, I love laughing at people making fools of themselves, but it's like it's far beyond that. Like if I were to see them doing that in person, I wouldn't look and laugh. I'd probably like look away. I'd be like, I'm not looking at you while you're doing that. I wouldn't want to make eye contact because, that's so undesirable. I don't even want to look at it, kind of thing.
Hey, and real quick here, this is a terrible break in what we're talking about, I get, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Judy, I just saw this comment on Facebook. She made it a while back, but Judy just said in Facebook a little bit ago, son and grandson have COVID, but are doing okay. She's quarantining herself in a bedroom. Judy is Shine's grandmother, by the way, just so you'll know, if you want to know where the last name Thompson is.
That's my uncle and my cousin.
Yeah, pray for them, all right, y'all. I just saw this and I was going to say, if I didn't say something about this now, I may forget, and that'd be awful. This is what we do in this program. If you believe in the power of prayer, pray for these people, pray for Judy, pray for son and grandson. If you just believe in the power of vibes, whatever you believe in, send some her way. I'll reach out to her, make sure she's doing all right, that type of stuff. Judy, we love you, though. We're praying for them. Back to what you were saying, Sean, buddy, right? I agree with you, man. I want to kick it to Zig to get his analysis because Zig, if you don't know this about Zig, the guy studies philosophy. He might have a bit deeper understanding as to how to solve some of this problem. But again, one more time, I pull some of these things up, and there's a couple more linked in here. There's some still photos. There's some people walking around in the whatever the Hulu show is, the red sort of the draped robe things. I don't know, with that weird white hat. I don't know what it is. I don't know what show it comes from. The Handmaid's Tale. That's what it is. There's a couple other things like that. But I just make this to say this. If I were to take these people seriously, and maybe I should, because a lot of people are talking about packing the courts. A lot of legislators are talking about packing the courts to save your rights, to save your fundamental rights. And I say yet one more time, if your rights really are that fundamental, how could you lose them so easily? There's some piece of logic there I'm missing in the syllogism. If they really are that fundamental, then how can you lose them that easily? And I hope your answer is, well, because someone could change it. Okay, well, shouldn't it not be that way? Well, yes, of course, Mr. Henry. We shouldn't have to talk about this. We shouldn't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, then do it the way that was originally designed to be done. Don't let 9 unelected old people force it down everybody else in this country. Convince your fellow man. Write a piece of legislation, take it through, create an amendment, man. The last time we passed an amendment was, 1992? I want to say there's a 27th Amendment. We did it fairly recently, okay? We could pass another amendment if you want to go that far. You don't even have to go that far. In 64, we did the 64 Civil Rights Act. There's a major piece of legislation that had sweeping change across the country. We can and have done this thing in very recent history. It's just much easier to force it through the court system because that way you don't have to worry about convincing your fellow man. All you have to do is make some, flowery argument that it somehow touches the 14th Amendment or might get, might do something with the 4th Amendment or I don't know. Just throw your topic du jour, amendment du jour out there that it's going to violate that particular day. And then, okay, good. But the problem with that, again, is if somebody comes back with a better conservative argument after you're done, well, not as easily, but if you got it in there that way by pure opinion alone, then you can get it out of that way by pure opinion alone. That is how that system in the court system is designed. Nobody should be surprised by this, and we cannot afford to be this naive as a society either. Let me kick it to Zig here real quick, buddy. I don't know. Am I going too far? What do you make of this? Is there a way to solve some of this? Do you get what I'm saying?
The interesting point is that so many people are voting for one presidential candidate on the basis of quote-unquote decency. Now, I don't know if people have seen the supporters supporting that gentleman, but presumably his supporters are all people making these wild videos on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. I think if some of the people who are not supporting our current president, who are supporting the other candidate, if they seen the behavior that the legislation that they support and the attitudes that they culturally adopt, if they seen what that leads to, maybe they wouldn't support some of these people. And again, maybe if we really want to restore decency, we ought to restore thought and thinking through newspapers and books. Right?
Jessica says, and Shine, by the way, jump in here in a minute too if you want to cut me off and have something else to say. Jessica said in Facebook here, if women are so worried about losing their rights as they need to go to an herbalist course to prepare themselves for all those, I don't know what that AB okay. The A word of getting rid of a child. We know what she's talking about. She's not trying to get us kicked off. I appreciate it. She's saying if you go to an herbalist course to prepare themselves for getting what is a woman's choice, they are expecting, sorry, not sorry. All I keep hearing is about the A word. She keeps blanking that out so we don't get censored on that. Matt's saying witches get a sprinkling of holy water, watch them squirm. I think that's Matt's slightly more eloquent take on the theme of the show today is it's a lesson in humility. All right. Kelly says it's very embarrassing for them. Nobody ever should take these people seriously. And then Judy said those are examples of why social publications are not always a good thing. Give nuts a sounding board. Well, I'm telling you. Okay. But some of this is going to be a good lesson in humility. That's why we have this theme for today's show. I hope, anyways. I hope. Okay. Because one way you can learn to be humble is by getting beaten down time after time after time. And I hope that Republicans are beating down for the right reasons, with the right stick, if you will. I hope that we don't find ourselves playing the same game as the left, because then it gets just like this perpetual repeat and rinse cycle of just retribution. We're not going after retribution. We're going after restoration, reconciliation. You know what I'm saying? As we enter here, the op-ed royale, Amy Coney Barrett confirmed. I just want to get through some of this real quick. I don't think we need to really, and then get on to a different story today of this either NXIVM stuff or some local news here as well. But as I'm going through here, let's reveal, Shine, if you can, pull that back up from the photos before Real News, Fake News. Real News, Fake News. Here we go. Fox News headline. Legislators are worried. Legislators are worried they may have to legislate if the Supreme Court stops legislating after Justice Barrett confirmation. That is, let me check here. Y'all are going half in half on this. 50% real news, 50% say fake news. That is a fake headline. That is not a real headline. That is literally just Mr. Henry getting in there and editing the HTML of a very real Fox News headline.
I nailed it, bro. I knew it was fake. I knew it was fake.
That is a fake headline. But this is what I'm saying, man. I mean, as we get more and more into 2020, frankly speaking, I'm a little bit surprised that some Twitter, Instagram account hasn't capitalized off the ability to do just this, of just mess around with HTML. If you right click on any website out there and hit inspect, you can make a website say whatever you want to say. Okay. And in the day and age where people are just reading headlines just like this, I mean, one could theoretically create an account and just throw headlines at people, and whatever narrative they want to create, they could create. You could put a CNN headline onto a Fox News headline. You can make Trump say whatever you wanted to in his Twitter account. It could be a very weird world out there. And what I'm saying is, man, when truth is that easy to manipulate, it's on you. The onus is on you to finally start doing something for yourself, to researching for yourself, to take a little bit of ownership in your own life and figure out, is that a real headline, or did Mr. Henry mess around with some stuff, man? Don't take everything at face value is what I'm saying here. Op-ed royale real quick. We'll hit just a few things.
Can I just have one more comment on the Amy Coney Barrett thing and on the Twitter people?
Yeah.
First off, it's just super toddler-like, and it's something that their parents should have punished out of them when they were like 2 or 3 years old. And honestly, like, I'm really annoyed by it. I used to laugh at it, but now when I see people doing it, I just think about how I wouldn't put up with that from, like, I don't know, a 10-year-old, you know, about something they were upset about, where they kind of do the almost fake crying thing, or the, you know, the first one, which was like bad sarcasm, whatever. It's like, just speak clearly, whatever. But it's all of it's very toddler-like, and I don't even really like acknowledging it. And I just want to, like, separate it from the various issues that may come up in the Supreme Court too. That is not political discourse. And I don't think I'm preaching to the choir here with the people who watch this show, but I don't even like, I think dignifying with trying to make them feel better about it or explain something to them is lowering myself. Like, someone like that needs to go sit outside away from people and then come back in a normal person, because that's not indicative of someone who's psychologically healthy. It's just not at all. And I don't like seeing it in society. But the other thing too is I don't think it was mentioned, and I think it should. I think the hyperbole of how much, I think you kind of talked about it on like a high level. Like, I don't think you're going to see a lot of societal changes, generally speaking, because there's a 6-3 conservative majority. In fact, I don't think it's everything they were saying was so hyperbolized and obviously way over the top. I really don't think you're going to see a whatever, I don't even know the right wording, a repeal of Roe v. Wade type of thing. I don't think you're going to see that. I really, 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 really don't. Because the thing about conservatives is they also don't they don't like adding any new bad stuff, right? But they also don't like rocking the boat, messing with a market that's already set up. They don't like major societal changes. They just don't. So I think that it's dangerous for people to be saying that it could be the case that you'd have major societal changes, not just in that and other things. I doubt you'll see anything at all. In fact, hopefully that's what you get out of a conservative court, is you don't see a lot of things change. They're good because anyway, that's I just wanted to say those two things. Like their points were over hyperbolized, and I don't even like trying to make them feel better or even explain things to them, because those people are broken.
I appreciate you saying that, man, because that is possibly the best point that's been made this morning. Seriously, man. Shine just hit it on the actual absolute head right there. The point of having a conservative justice, that goodness gracious, now that we even have to call them conservative justices, but the point of having an originalist or a textualist is that they lean so hard into this idea called stare decisis. I've been sure you've heard multiple times before. Shine comes out here, what he just said is like, look, man, let's also get this clear. When these people are out here saying that I'm going to lose all my fundamental rights, Grant kind of touched it. I'm speaking as Stein. Grant touched it at a high level, philosophical level. But let's be for real. These conservative justices who believe in stare decisis, they're not going to overturn this stuff. It's near impossible to overturn the stare decisis.
Well, saying that to people on the right too. You think you're going to go out there and just get a whole bunch of things you don't like rolled back? That's not going to happen, because that's not the way conservatives are culturally.
That's not the way conservative justices,
especially conservative justices. I was saying culturally, generally. They don't like to just go around swinging a big hammer. It's just.
I think you might see rolling back more of the administrative state, right? Because if you're an originalist, and this will be a test. This court will be a test of how originalist these folks really are, because it doesn't say in the Constitution that you can have an administrative state with the broad powers that the EPA has, for example, and the other 300 plus administrative agencies. And the problem with those administrative agencies is that, for one, they have a quasi-legislative function where they can pass rules that are like legislation, but they're also appointed by the executive, and they're trying to carry out the will of the executive. But also, three, you have administrative courts. So these administrators have functions or powers. You have separation of powers. Well, they don't. They have a combination of every branch's power. So I hope that we actually see originalism and see more of those things rolled back, those capabilities rolled back in the administrative state.
I think the most controversial thing you'll see this court do is not taking anything away. It'll be, well, that really should have been figured out in the legislature.
Yeah,
and
I agree. Yeah.
The most controversial thing you'll see out of this 6-3 split is, well, y'all could just write another line or two, okay? It's not our job to write the law for you. That might be it. I really don't think you'll see them declare a portion of the executive branch unconstitutional. I don't think you'll see them roll back. I mean, like a lot of people think, and even the Democrats have been saying this whole time, they're going to roll back Obamacare, and that's why Trump wanted Barrett on the court. That's not a guarantee at all.
Right,
in fact, it's far more likely that Trump will lose, because it's been law for over a decade. And Supreme Court just doesn't like overturning law unless, like, you can really point to some harm. Unless you can really, really point to some harm on a mass societal wide scale. Supreme Court doesn't like having the bullseye. They don't like being the decision makers. And honestly, what we're doing is, I say what we're doing, what the country is doing by putting Amy Coney Barrett on there is helping making the Supreme Court more like itself. being originalists, not rocking the boat, being the least powerful branch of government. That's where they want to be. That's where they should be. And hopefully these three justices will know in a couple decades, but know if that gets them back where they should be.
And I think to put a practical example onto what Shine's talking about, and maybe a little bit of what Zig's talking about as well. If you don't know what the fourth branch of government is, by the way, of what Zig's mentioning, these agencies, they pass regulations, which is just a fancy different term for a law, because it has the same end result at a fee or fine or something else. You're going to lose your business. You're going to lose a lot of money. I don't know. These agencies can pass regulations, and they're not really accountable to anybody else. They're definitely not elected positions. They call it the fourth branch of government that's not accountable to the other three because it's not within the original checks and balances design. But agencies where Congress delegating some of its power, if not a lot of its power, which is in the Constitution, it can do that. But to the extent that it's delegated its power right now to agencies is, well, that's a totally different conversation.
Well,
but here's
and it's not just that. They also have a judicial function. They have administrative courts that are a separate court from the rest of any other court in America. And from what I understand, most of the rulings, probably over 90% of all rulings, are in favor of the administration, the administrative court. So that's the issue.
And one quick thing, and then we'll get to a local story here that I kind of want to end some of the show with today. A practical example, I think, of what Sean's talking about here of if you see anything at all. So take Roe v. Wade, for example, okay? What people are saying is the case that cemented a woman's right to choose. We all know this. And unless I'm wrong here, somebody correct me. It's been a while since I've done the law school thing. But from my understanding, it's actually Casey versus Planned Parenthood, or maybe it's Planned Parenthood versus Casey. That's sort of the controlling language for what a woman's right to choose is. And Roe v. Wade set up this trimester framework, and it really wasn't working too well. So in Casey, they took that trimester framework and said, okay, what your right really is based upon whether or not we violate or whether or not the law that you're trying to pass at a state or somewhere else poses an undue burden on a woman's right to choose. That's the language now that a lot of people will turn to. This is super base level, constitutional interpretation stuff, right? Whether that law in a state that you're trying to restrict a woman's right to choose. I'm using that term because I don't want to use the A term in case it gets kicked somewhere, right? But if your state law is trying to restrict a woman's right to choose, does it place an undue burden on that woman? What Shine's saying is, and I tend to agree, if anything's going to happen at all, the court may look at that language and say, like, oh, I don't know, man, maybe we shouldn't be deciding at a federal level what's an undue burden for every single state in America. Maybe we should kick that back down to the states. So while in New York, you can do whatever you want to, Virginia, you can do whatever you want to, California, you can do whatever you want to. Maybe in Tennessee and Alabama and Louisiana, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to obtain one of those procedures, right? At Tennessee level. Doesn't mean you can't drive up to Virginia and get it done. Doesn't mean you can't drive over to the neighboring state and get it done. It's not going to be illegal at a federal level. It just might be a little bit more localized with what that terminology actually means. But I think this is what China's talking about, these incremental interpretations of...
I think even that would surprise me.
Me too.
Even
that,
that just to be clear with everybody, Grant, I mean, the most likely thing is nothing will happen. That is
exactly.
the most... That's what I'm trying to tell everybody, to refute the point of... I mean, even what you said is kind of unlikely. In my opinion, and maybe you know better than me, but I'm trying to refute these crying toddler children on Twitter, not with it will be okay if what you're afraid of happens, because I feel like that was kind of the message there for a minute, and I just want to be more realistic and say nothing is probably going to happen. Nothing that affects you. Nothing that affects you very much at all. I mean, did you care about the Supreme Court before 2 months ago? Did you know how many people were on it? Can you mention one case from it? No, you little toddler. Now go sit outside away from everybody. Be socially ostracized until you want to be a normal human,
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we also talked about the actual statistic, and the statistic is that precedent is only overturned 2% of the time. And then that precedent is typically only overturned within a 10-year window. That's the highest chance that it has of being overturned. So that's the important statistic, in fact, in mind. The only thing I'm saying, what I'm saying about the administrative state is I'm saying I hope they take an active role in limiting its powers. I hope that they choose to hear cases that will limit the power of the administrative state, because at one point in time, the judicial philosophy for the Supreme Court used to be judicial restraint. And in my opinion, they let all kinds of wacky things happen under judicial restraint because they wouldn't change precedent.
There's a high likelihood that if a new administrative agency was made in the next 20 years, that if it was sued, it would be, I think new things being stopped are the most likely thing that this court would do. Like if they made a new agency and someone sued because they weren't doing something correctly because the legislation was kind of jacked up and they had some kind of authority they didn't need to have, I think that this court may step in and do something. I just don't think they're going to take like the FDA and limit their powers, something that's already existing, or take existing law and gut it. I think it's so unlikely, but I do think that Zig is correct. Like, I think new things will get a fresh look if there's lawsuits about them, and a different kind of look than we've gotten in the past 30 years.
I'm also lobbying and hoping and advocating that it does happen. The administrative state shouldn't exist. There's no constitutional justification for it. There's what'll be interesting, and the technical term is the non-delegation clause. What'll be interesting is to see where this court stands in the non-delegation clause, which it says clearly in the Constitution only Congress may pass laws. And listen, I get it. Administrators aren't passing laws; they're passing rules.
Yeah.
Rules. But if the rules have the same effect as laws, then what's the difference?
No, that's correct. They're passing rules, but if rules have the same effect as laws, wait, what are we talking about? I love it, Zig. You're right.
So, I guess I'm proactively lobbying. Anybody who is listening should encourage lawmakers, both in Congress, both in Senate, both in the House, and anybody who's going to be appointed to the Supreme Court to work on limiting the power of the administrative state. Everybody should lobby for that.
Hey, Sean, as we hit the end of the show here, man, if you can find in the show notes, it might be a little bit difficult because I'm all over the place here with the show notes this morning, but scroll down to the local stories section. It's right after that big break where you'll see in red bold, there's Joe Biden being honest. We can get to that story later, but find the local stories section and then the rally against mandates in Knoxville. That's all highlighted in yellow. Pull up that video if you can, Sean. As Sean's pulling up that video, let me just bring up everyone up to speed here, sort of a TLDR, as Sean's setting this video up for us, of this NXIVM case that's been going on. And I don't know how much you want to get into today, but it's major, major news. And it's also, I don't want to say related to the Maxwell case that's going on. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's mistress / if I'm being totally for real with y'all, I'm pretty sure
it was his madam,
dude, I'm pretty sure Ghislaine Maxwell was the pimp of that entire operation. I'm pretty sure she was the one that...
It's called a madam.
It's called a madam. in the colloquial term that people know, that's what she was doing. She was running show. She was cracking whips. Her family is plugged in. To the extent that Jeffrey Epstein was not plugged in, Epstein was going to be the fall guy. Epstein was the guy that was basically just, I don't know, out there as the front, the face. He was the guy that was mentally... Anyways, man, this NXIVM case, I say is interrelated only because it's tacitly dealing with similar things in the same realm of people. You get what I'm saying?
It's like her sister and brother and stuff, right?
I don't know if they're related, but I do know they were sort of recruiting from the same pool. Does that make sense? And I don't mean just like age demographic. I'm talking from Hollywood. I'm talking business leaders. I'm talking, high profile folks. I mean, goodness gracious, dude, the leader of this NXIVM thing came over and was endorsed by the Dalai Lama. I mean, it was high level stuff, right? So this guy from NXIVM, I don't like saying this dude's name, so I'm not going to give him credit for any of this stuff. If you want to look it up, there's documentaries you can check out right now. But suffice to say, it was this like master manipulator that was pitching this new thing as a cult leader about how to change your life and pursue your dreams, and some type of like methodology that they had detached some science to for how to accomplish your goals. All that high level nonsense BS that you hear pushed around Hollywood all the time of be your best self and blah, blah, blah. We're going to give you the tools to whatever. Okay. So you brought all these people in. He had them each paying like, $2,500 to $3,500 every step they wanted to go up. It was a massive money-making scheme. He was at the very top, and eventually it became, if not always was intended to be, just a massive sex cult ring, man. And they started recruiting more and more females in this, and the females became younger and younger and younger. And then he started getting wrapped up with Hollywood folks. And Hollywood folks, that girl from Smallville, I don't want to say her name either. You can look her up as well. She was one of the main recruit people. And it was like, dude, some of this stuff you can read in the show notes if you want to. I don't want to get this graphic with this morning, but they were like branding themselves and stuff in areas that you don't want to hear about. And it was nasty, nasty stuff, man. It was just absolutely disturbing, nasty stuff. all that's just to say, to sort of fill time as Sean's pulling this video up so we can switch topics entirely. But the nice part about this story is he was sentenced yesterday to 120 years. 120 years. And you can read it right here. I'll just read it. It's an AP News headline. Disgraced self-improvement guru, a guy who we're not going to say, whose NXIVM followers included millionaires and Hollywood actors, was sentenced to 120 years on Tuesday for training some adherents into sex slaves, branding his initials with sexually abused 15-year-olds. All right. So there you go. You know how Mr. Henry feels about those stories of pedophilia. They all need to go somewhere. There's a specific place, I believe, in eternity for these folks. And it's perversion of innocence is the pinnacle of human evil. I tell you this right now. Sean, as we end the show here today, something massive has been happening in Knoxville, man. And I'm telling you, if you don't pay attention now to the story, you're going to miss out on the curve here. Because we have knowledge that's been publicly available, so I don't feel bad about saying this, that our Speaker of the House here in the state level and a very well-known state representative have basically solidified and cemented that this is going to be the issue they will be working on as soon as session opens up in January of this next year. Shine, go ahead and play that video for us if you got that queued up.
Protest. A crowd of people gathered in Market Square this afternoon to peacefully protest COVID-19 related mandates. The group spoke out about Knox County's mask regulation, social distancing, and the power of the Board of Health. WATE 6 on Your Side reporter Jordan Brown was there, and tonight she hears from people on both sides of the issue.
Wearing a mask is one of the 5 core actions from the Knox County Health Department to help limit the spread of COVID-19. But that core action and county mandate is the very thing people here today are protesting against.
The mask mandate is, there are risks to wearing masks.
It's not an inconvenience at all for me.
2 very different viewpoints of the same argument we've been hearing ever since a mask mandate was put in place. But this group, No Mandates Tennessee, is focused on one goal: dissolving the Knox County Board of Health and ultimately getting rid of all COVID-related mandates.
We want our elected form of representative government back, and enough tyranny from one man, from county mayors, and from administrative health boards that are not even elected by the people.
We feel like our constitutional rights are being slowly eroded away, and we need to wake up and take a stand now before it's too late.
Since the start of the pandemic, the Board of Health has been in charge of creating mandates that are supposed to help curb the spread of COVID-19, including mask requirements, curfews, and social gathering limitations. But some think their power extends too far, which was the reason for this protest.
We're protesting any mandate that is put in place by an elected body. That would, whether it's masks, whether it's guns, whether it's closures, business closures, anything like that.
But not everyone is looking at these rules as an infringement of rights. Some think the war on masks is a danger to the public.
I think it's truly the best way to say it would be ignorant. It's just an egregious lapse of just common decency, let alone adhering to science and what the doctors and the CDC have advised.
Back at the rally, others like Gail Green say this is deeper than just a few rules. For her, it's about what could come next.
When people say, you're putting others at risk or other people in harm's way, that's not what this is about. It's about not having to show my papers or the chip in my arm that says I've been vaccinated next before I can go into the grocery store, because medical freedom is really important to me and my family.
This protest was peaceful, but they're making sure their demands are heard loud and clear. In Knoxville, Jordan Brown, WATE 6 on Your Side.
Jordan.
Hey, does anyone know in the Knoxville area who that guy was at the very end? They kept having these sort of juxtaposing viewpoints of here's the rally, here's somebody that says that I
no
it's
idea
not a
who
problem.
that guy is.
Okay, they never qualified who he was either. It was just some like here's some
He's
other
on
random
the other side, Grant.
Yeah, I
That's who.
didn't.
He's on the other side. That's who.
Yeah.
They had to find somebody because there was no one in the square.
No,
to
I
talk to, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. It was interesting, man. I don't know. You grab a board of health member or somebody. I don't know, somebody. If you really want to make it the other side opinion, or at least qualify who this dude is, such and such local community activist, or here's some random dude on Zoom who disagrees. Whatever. It didn't matter. But the point of me bringing this up, though, is you see the number of people here, man. This same type of rally happened in Franklin. I think the same type of rally is going to or has already happened in the Nashville area as well. I wanted to bring this up just to see if there's any comments on this from the Knoxville area. I think this is a type of movement that's been going around for a while, in Tennessee in particular. And I just don't know, what other states are making this. And I don't know if other states understand what's actually going down. I mean, in Zig in Pennsylvania or Jeskett out in Pennsylvania, I'm sure you'll know, but in Tennessee, there's 6 counties where the Board of Health is making all these edicts, right? And it fits in the theme of the day of today's show of, a lesson in humility in some sense of, yet one more time, man, we're talking about unelected individuals having rule over your life. Now, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say this is an anti-science thing, but at least from what I'm picking up from most of these people here, it's about the idea of not having your voice heard. It's about the idea of a lack of representation. It's about the idea of an unelected board issuing edicts that have very real penalties attached to them, monetary or otherwise. I think some of them is a Class C misdemeanor, which does carry a jail sentence behind it, right? I don't know if it's large,
in Knox County, it's more about the business closures than the masks. It's just, the reason the news went to masks is that's an easy way to explain to the politically uninitiated why there's a rally happening in downtown Knoxville.
Well, and let me
when it comes right down to it, it's truly about the business closures, limiting hours and things like that, when we are already in a time where people are hurting economically and we're trying to keep businesses open. We're trying to keep people employed, those kind of things.
Well, let me ask this, man. And this may be a difficult question to ask, but I was trying to figure out as I was prepping this for the show today. What's the best way to properly parse where these types of rallies really are, what they're actually asking for? Are they trying to make a scientific point, or they're trying to make a political point here? Okay, and here's the question I want to
people in the comments, because I feel like there was a lot of variance in the speakers. There were some people it was about the government, some people it was about the science. It was kind of a forum more than it was a planned group of speakers. There were a lot of people who just volunteered. Hey, can I speak too? That kind of thing.
And that's why I want to know. So let me throw out a hypothetical here and just see how people would respond to it. So here's the hypothetical. Let's say that what the Knox County Board of Health tried to do, a few weeks back, where they tried to strip the Knox County Board of Health of its actual enforcement power, executive power, of law creating power, right? If they tried to strip it and just make them a purely advisory board. Okay. And then I suppose that power would move to one of two areas, either directly to the mayor itself, or I don't know, maybe there was an idea in there of allowing it to move to the county commissioners instead, and you could have a panel vote. And I want to go with that second option. I don't know if that's what they're proposing.
Legislation change, it would have gone to the health head of the health department.
Well, let me pretend like it's going for a second to the county commissioners, only for a hypothetical to help me prove this point. So let's say then that it was a vote based upon the county commissioners. You'll have a few out there and then 2 at-large members as well, right? I don't know what the panel's made up. Is it 9? Is it 12?
11,
something like that?
Is
it 11?
Commission?
Yeah, in the last. Okay, so let's say you have these 11 people voting, and this is a multiverse theory hypothetical in the future that it's passed. All the powers now with these county commissioners, and let's say Glenn Jacobs is the vote that maybe swing or something. Doesn't matter. But let's say that at some point it does get bad enough, or for one reason or another, the county commissioners decide to do almost exactly what the Board of Health has done right now. Would they still be having these rallies? That's my question. Do you get the distinction I'm making, Sean?
Okay. I mean, maybe, but also is like. In your hypothetical, is the recovery rate still 99.5?
Oh yeah, everything else is still the same. The only difference is that you actually get to have a say through your person.
It's really difficult to say what these people would do, mostly because I'm not them and I don't lead them. That's the biggest thing. I was just an attendant. Excuse me, and I've been to all the county commission meetings and stuff. But all the people I've heard speak, they've even mentioned that they've said, we get to talk to you. When they're talking to county commission, they're like, we've been here every month, we've been here 4 or 5 times and we get to talk to you. Our problem is these other people are making laws and we don't get to talk to them. We don't get to have a public forum like this. And I think if you look at the whole picture, Grant, not just the rallies, not just like Facebook posts, excuse me, but But the county commission, what's going on at the meetings? The actual resolutions that are getting passed by our mature elected leaders. One of the things that was passed on Monday, and it's got to go through a second reading next month, is that the health board has to have a public forum the way the county commission does, where they do it in person, where people can sign up to speak, where the public forum can take 3 or 4 hours if necessary. They've only been lasting like 15, 20 minutes on Zoom, and they don't have to do it in person. So theoretically, if they didn't like someone, they could just mute them, and things like that. Or even filter it, right? Say, I don't want that person. Theoretically is what I'm saying. I'm not saying they've been accused of doing any of that stuff. But what I'm saying is our county commission has moved. They've heard the I want representative constitutional government, and they're moving that way. They're saying, okay, well, I get what you're saying now. So you want to be able to petition them. You want to be able to say, I don't like your decision. And you want it to be able to be in person, like you do with the county commission. They just want it to reflect what it feels like. Also, too, they're creating a separate advisory board just to add some other kinds of expertise. That was a resolution that passed on Monday. So there's also economists, psychologists, and other various fields Zig's excited. There's going to be economists on it. There's other sciences represented in the advisement of the county during this difficult time.
Well, and any major decision should involve an economist. It's easy for people to get paranoid and lead to gross government interventions, but it's very difficult for people to think about the cost of those interventions, and that's what economists do. There should be economists on every board. There should be economists on every county commission because they specialize in trade-offs. And I don't think elected officials always think of trade-offs first. They think of their constituents, but just as much as they have a responsibility to carry out the will of their constituents, they also have a dual responsibility to inform their constituents about the trade-offs and costs of their ideas or of their thinking, and that doesn't happen often enough.
But Richard just said in Facebook. So when I asked that question of if the exact same thing were to happen, business being shut down, Class C misdemeanors, you have to wear a mask mandates, all that stuff. If the exact same thing were to happen, except it comes through the county commissioners. Obviously, the idea I'm trying to stretch out here is it just about having a lack of representation in the unelected board, or is it something else differently as well that you just disagree with whoever's doing it? Okay. And I asked, would there still be rallies? Would there still be, people showing up to these meetings like this? And Richard said yes. Right.
Yeah,
and so
it may not be as big though. I mean, it may be a little different. I think part of the reason people are upset is it's easy to take, I'm already upset because these businesses are closed or whatever. There's certain restrictions in the county. And then you add on the hot sauce of, and it was these unelected people. Well, you go from 5 to 8. You know what I'm saying? And I think that makes it a bigger tent of people being upset. And it's hard to say though, Grant. It's hard to say because would an elected body have been so bold, knowing that there was these kind of consequences? Would they have reached out to economists first, made the arguments and said, here are the trade-offs? You know what I'm saying? Would they have been more accessible when the numbers of suicide started rising in June? Like, make that part of the conversation and act. You know what? It's hard to say because you can't trade them out, because this whole thing might have been completely different if the people that had just been voted upon or had been voted upon 2 years ago, if those people had been making the decisions, they probably would have made less decisions that made people upset. They probably would have made the case a little better besides, science. They probably would have talked about trade-offs like Zig said.
And that's the point though. When we're talking about science, what science are we talking about? Are we only talking about virology? That's one science. What about the science of psychology? What about the science of economics? What about the anthropological implications, the political science behind it all? Why is it only one science, and it's the science that the elite few, the aristocratic best, get to say this is science? That's not true. There's more than one science.
Well, and let me add to that real quick with some, actual update here with what happened on Monday. This is from WBIR.com. It's what you're looking at on the screen. Let me make sure the chat isn't in the way. Yeah. Knox County Commission votes to form public health committee separate from the Board of Health. commissioners said if the state limited the Board of Health's power, public health decisions would fall on the mayor. This committee would help advise him. And then piggybacking that article with one from, I believe it's from October 1st, but it may have been September 29th. I don't remember, but it's WVLT. Here, Tennessee's House Speaker looks to roll back health department's powers. So if you remember that sentence there in the WBIR article, if the state starts pulling back the powers from the Board of Health, it would fall to the mayor, blah, blah, blah. And this was after the Knox County Commission passed the first resolution, where you have the Speaker of the House looking to roll back these health department powers in these 6 counties. And I don't need to go into it more, but what I'm saying is I've been very pleased with the maturity of the Knox County Commission of balancing listening to the will of their constituents and also being mature and not knee-jerk, and it kind of happening in this like slow, methodical way, because there does need to be things changed on the state level with legislation. And even just the simple, who came up with the idea of the health department should have to do public forum like county commission? That's brilliant. And it also, I think, is necessary. I think they will be less likely to do things that infuriate people if they get good feedback. And maybe they need some advisement from this board that they're going to be hiring. But a lot of exciting things in Knox County, because it isn't just rallies. It's also actual things in government that are changing. And,
Erickson in Facebook, by the way, said Green New Deal and Event 201, our idea spawned from it as well. We are in Event 201 now, predicted down to the day almost. Coincidence? Maybe, but the odds feel like no, not just coincidence. Michael said this following comment in response to me asking that question of the video we just played a minute ago of who was that other random guy, that was he just somebody that had a different opinion to some dude they found who had a Zoom account. He said, keep in mind, he, meaning that individual, was in his house. The media knew who he was and went to him. Judy said, my family members were diligent to wear masks and still got it. Let's see here. Kelly said, a huge issue. Some people cannot wear the masks for many reasons. These businesses aren't honoring the ADA requirements. And then Kelly put in emoji form what I'm really getting to by asking this question. She had a little frog, and then a fire after it. Okay, but obviously everybody knows the emoji she's talking, what she's setting up here is this idea that if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it's immediately going to jump out. But if you put a frog in a pot of room temperature water, of tepid water, then, and slowly turn up the heat, it'll stay in until you cook the thing alive in boiling water. Okay, and that's part of the reason why I bring this up, because there's been a new paradigm set. There is a new stage that we are all playing on because of the COVID stuff. And I'm not necessarily trying to say it's for better or for worse right now. That's not the point of what I'm saying. I think most people in the program will say it's for much worse. What I'm saying though is, look, man, this is not the first time we've dealt with some China-related illness that's made its way over here. You can go to SARS, you can go to MERS, you can go to H1N1, you can go to swine flu, you can go to bird flu. It doesn't matter. It's all coming from a similar area in China. It just so happens this is the first one that had the death rate that it did, that had the ability to transfer like it does, and that hit the news headlines as quickly as it did. All right, now it's become a world literal pandemic, but it's not going to be the last time either. All right, and I don't know if it's going to be something as mild or as marginal as SARS or MERS. The point I'm making, again, is because of the COVID stuff in America specifically, there's a new stage that we are playing on right now. So I ask these questions because I don't know if it's next year or 5 years or 50 years from now, but at some point, these same people are possibly in leadership right now are going to be dealing with the same questions. It'll just be with a different virus. Do you get what I'm saying? So part of what I'm saying is if we don't figure some of this stuff out now, so the questions that we're really asking, what we really want to know about, then I think we're bound to make the same mistakes going forward. If we don't figure out if it's just about representative republic, if it's just about having a voice in this issue, or if it's more about having a conversation about the science, or are we trying to have both at the same time? These are very difficult questions that we need to start answering now and be very clear about what we want the end result to be. Because I think we're all having these conversations as if once we get past the COVID situation, it's good, we're done. I think even some of the people on the science side might be thinking that there's a sense of, security in a vaccine being put out there. If 70% of the population voluntarily takes a vaccine, then we're good to go. We can wipe our hands free, but now it becomes like a seasonal flu. Well, possibly, man, until the next one comes around. And it doesn't even have to be nearly as deadly as COVID. It's because the COVID stage has been set. That's what people have been desensitized to. Or become jaded of, or we're just used to dealing with this now.
You make a really valuable point, Grant, and let me at least my strategy, the way I think of it, and leaning on that constitutional representative republic side of it, is we can't have the normal discourse about what we should do if there's unelected people who can't be fired making all the decisions.
Right.
This is about setting the stage for when we can have the discourse, right? We can't even have discourse if no one's worried about getting fired, because people who aren't worried about getting fired make decisions and tell you, deal with it, not what do you think I should do? Well, I don't want to make that person upset, but we need to make sure we get this done. Balancing all that stuff. That's what elected officials do. We need elected officials doing these things, and they may do it right. They may do it wrong, but either way, they'll be held accountable. They'll be lauded. They'll be fired. Whatever. We need that freedom to fail so that truth can rise to the top. And right now, I think the biggest danger is not necessarily what is being done with delegated executive authority and delegated congressional authority here in the state of Tennessee. It's how it's being done. Because the way it's set up right now in these 6 counties, I'm quoting the Knox County law director, this board at the moment has the power to say that the Second Amendment's suspended. Okay.
Yeah, well, no.
So what I'm saying is, leaning on this constitutional representative government, we have to say, no. Okay, the only people who make decisions are these elected people. So if we don't like them, we can fire them in 4 years. Otherwise, then it's like once that is established as norm again, then we can get to, okay, let's talk about policy. Let's talk about how this is being implemented. But I think these emergency powers all the way up to the governor, but I guess you could say the president as well. But at least I don't know that as well. I don't know how that affects everything. In the state of Tennessee, I'd say this emergency powers that are being delegated from the governor and then some from the legislature, that's the biggest threat. And I like to go after the biggest threat that can hurt the most people. That's what it is. When it gets down to, really what we've been dealing with here, 11 p.m. curfews just for like a few weeks. I'm not, and the mask mandates and things like that aren't even really being enforced. No, not many people, I haven't heard of anybody getting arrested. Other states have it way worse, okay? So like we've staved off a lot of the unconstitutional mandates that a lot of other states and millions of people are living under. But what's really important, where we have the leverage and I think the moral high ground, is to say only elected officials can make these decisions. Because as we get further away from the moment of fear, whenever that was, like May to July, as we get further away from that, people will be less bold in their willingness to take your rights. They will be more and more afraid of it. But while that's happening, this is also a good time to reaffirm wherever you live in Tennessee that you will not put up with people who aren't elected making decisions about your lives. You just, at least ones that can put you in jail or close your business. You know what I'm saying?
And that's the point that I try and make every single time we bring up one of these topics, is for those that, however you fall on side of this argument, all I've ever tried to do is just make the argument of like, look, man, everybody knows where I stand on this. I think I'm in the major minority when my opinion comes to the audience here. I fully recognize that. I understand. But I also have a psychological reason for this that I fully admit as well, okay? So I'm not hiding this ball from anybody. But all I ever try and say to anybody is, look, if you're on one side or the other, if what we're going for here is persuasion, okay, if what we're going here is the classical art form of literally convincing someone else that you are correct and that they should possibly alter how they do things, I just don't think that the unelected board forcing you to do it is the most convincing way to do this, man. I just don't think. And I think what Shine is saying too is you're correct, man. These implications are much, much bigger than what we're just currently dealing with. And we're not there yet, but at some point we could get there.
But they have the power to do the really bad things.
That's right, yeah.
Why on TV are we only having a medical doctor come on and talk about medical problems? Why aren't we having an economist on at the same time? Then that gives the false impression that there's only one science and that only medicinal or medical science matters. We should have an economist come on in every state at the same time the Board of Health speaks or anytime Dr. Fauci speaks. Why didn't the chief economist go on TV? Because everyone can very clearly, easily understand health being threatened. What people, again, can't understand is the economics, and they don't hear about it on TV.
You know, when they first started the updates, the COVID updates that the president and the White House were doing, Mnuchin was a part of those, and they were actually a lot better.
Right.
Because you at least were getting something. You were getting from the I mean, you know, it's really like how good Walmart's doing, right, basically, right? But, like, at least, you know, the head of the Treasury was talking to you about something to do with the economy, and it was helpful. And eventually that stopped, and I don't know why. And, you know, that's on the government level, but we should have more from the private. There should be more people like Diamond up at, is he JP Morgan Chase?
I think so. I know who you're talking about, you know.
Yeah, kind of one of the outspoken elites. Like, they should be talking about, and I mean, I guess he actually is. He does actually, because you hear it on like Maria Bartiromo and things like that. But those kind of voices should be amplified, even though, you know, I wouldn't trust that guy as far as I could throw him. But at least there'd be something to reference, right? You know, it should just be part of the cultural conversation generally.
Well, we shouldn't only give people the impression that there's one science. There's not one science. It would be a lesson in humility if people could acknowledge that economics is a science, and those folks should have a voice at the table at all times, so people understand the cost, where their money's going to, how it's being spent, those damages. But people don't care because they don't see it.
Let me ask this real quick, and we're actually getting a call from Richard here. So give me just a second here, Sean. I'm gonna actually share.
Oh man.
We upset the Richard,
Call
man.
From Richard Esparza.
Call from Richard.
To accept, press 1.
Yep, to accept, press 1. Richard.
All that. That's so
yeah,
good.
I know. Richard, what's up, buddy? Can you hear us?
I can.
Right.
I just wanted to mention we were very close into a major slip into tyranny when all this started. Just to give you an idea, a little preface beforehand, though, with the mask mandates, you've had India Kincannon telling people that you must wear a mask at the polling places, which the state of Tennessee says no, that's not the case. On Sunday at the rally, she cut the power at Market Square just in case we needed power.
Really? Is that why they were speaking out of the megaphone?
Right. Well, they had a microphone set up, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get it to work.
Okay.
But the power was cut beforehand, and then there were people that saw a city van show up and cut the power back on after the rally was over. But if you go back to when it started, I've got personal friends who said people were being stopped on the street, and the police, as they were driving down the road, and the police were pulling them over, asking them if they were essential workers or not.
I have heard that, yeah.
And what proof that they had that they were. So Zig may shed some light from another state to see if it happened up in Pennsylvania. But the thing is, the pushback, I don't understand why the nail, the old saying, why the dog keeps barking because there's a nail under him and it doesn't hurt bad enough. I don't understand why this is not hurting bad enough for people to stand up and push back because they are looking at the face of tyranny. It just takes a little bit more.
Well, let me ask this, Richard, while you're on the line, and then I want to get Zig's response as well. I'm putting this statement out there because I want some critique on it. Zig's asking this idea of why do we not have other scientists involved in the science of economics, the science of anthropology, the science of politics, the science of how this is going to interact with other human beings other than just virologists, right?
Even psychology.
Yeah, or psychology, right? So I personally believe that on November 4th, we will start to have the scientists. I'm not playing here either, man, but I want y'all to pick this statement apart. What I'm saying is a very clear and obvious statement here. I think that the reason why we are not having those types of input right now is because there's a lot of political capital to gain out of this. I think when November 4th or 5th hits, when nobody's trying to win a race on anything anymore, we're going to start having much greater input because people will start to genuinely be concerned about something other than just what can I use this as to how can I exploit this situation to win my campaign? How can I exploit the situation because I know some of the journalist is going to ask me a question about what my plan is. Richard, go ahead and respond, man. Then we'll let you go and I'll let Zig respond to it, man.
Yeah, I think it's all over after November 4th. Basically, this is being used politically, and there's no shadow of a doubt about it. I think it was they had the whole war gaming of it last year, Event 401 or 101 or whatever it was called. I really believe this was going to be used under the Hillary Clinton. They thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and I think it was a planned event that did not come out the way they thought it would.
Richard, buddy, I always appreciate you calling. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, there goes Richard, call-in number. We need to utilize this call-in number a little bit more. Sean, I'll let you take the Sharon sound back out so we can get to the end of the show because we're running a little bit late. But Zig, I don't know, buddy. I'll let you respond as well, man. What do you think? I mean, come November 4th, November 5th, you think we're going to start seeing actual experts from different industries come in here?
I don't know if we will and if we can expect that to happen. But people who support liberty, what they ought to advocate for is exactly that. Because prior to the outbreak of this virus, folks in the liberty movement were just reacting to medical science versus their political freedom. They never thought to bring in economists and psychologists and other folks to help them better make their case. But going forward, that's what ought to be insisted upon because it's very one-sided. And furthermore, folks who may not be in agreement with us they want to make it seem like they have a monopoly on science. And until we bring in more professionals to show them that they don't, they're going to keep insisting that they do in order to lecture us.
Again, let me prove this one more time, though, because of what Zig just said, all right? That there's a political ideology that presumes to have a monopoly on science. I'll put it another way, okay? Because he's exactly correct when he says this. My biggest problem, one of my largest problems with COVID hitting in 2020 is that it was an election season, okay? And the point I'm trying to prove here is that we're politicizing everything nowadays, not just a virus. Now, how you could get a virus to see blue and red, I don't know, man, but we did it somehow. We had no problem when people were marching to the tune of 10,000 people in the middle of the streets just because they were in masks, but we do have a problem when people are standing side by side in the middle of a bar while wearing masks. It doesn't make any sense to me if you don't understand that we're politicizing this, okay? But it does make a lot of sense with what Zig is saying. The overwhelming majority of academia is controlled by a specific political ideology. That is an objectively true, factual statement. I don't think anybody's going to argue with me on that. And if the majority of our science is coming out of academia, which is just an axiom that is true on its face, then it shouldn't be surprising to people either that once you politicize science, you take science politics into it. Science politics is only going to lead you one way. Academia in general is only going to lead you one way. In some sense, I think the fault is our own for politicizing this to begin with, because once it was politicized, nobody should have been surprised at how this thing turned out. Once you start asking academia at large, hey, what is your political take on this situation? Well, clearly, my political take is, come on. Now, again, once I think we can get politics out of this, but I want to end, we'll keep going if you want to, Sean, but let me kick it to you, man. Am I too naive with this? I do have the burden of looking at stuff half full, of looking glasses half full all the time. That's the Mr. Henry curse.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying, because I don't know if I do. Are you saying we're going to be able to have a more robust debate post-November 3rd?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. All right. And we're going to have a more robust debate because people will have less political motivation after the election.
Yeah. Which I've seen people that are saying no.
I think there'll be less, but I don't think there'll be none. I think it doesn't matter who wins. There will be an advantage to politicizing the virus, mostly because there's big money tied to it now, right? Where we're subsidizing all kinds of things. We've given out trillions of dollars in bailouts. There'll be more, and believe me, those aren't over. There'll be more people saying, hey, I need money from the government because COVID. I don't think we'll be able to have a robust debate about what is happening now until the virus is in the rear view and the bad economy is in the rear view. And I think while people are upset, we will not have honest debate about what has been done this year, if it was a good idea, what helped, what hurt, what was disingenuous, what was sincere. Historians, really. I doubt that we will leave that morass at least by the end of the year. Let me say that. At least, we'll get it all through Christmas. Christmas is going to be like This is going to be even if Trump wins, I think it'll be weird, man, because it'll be a way talking about the virus a lot will be a way of taking power away from him the other side. It'll also be a way to demand power. Like, look at these dumb people who aren't taking care of it. We should demand that these other people are taking care of it. Get what I'm saying? And using the virus as leverage. But the Republicans will do it too. So it's just going to happen.
And Kevin just said in Facebook a second ago, he said, not if Biden steals it. It will turn up the screws on it if he wins. Right? And
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bill.
Oh, sorry, I thought I heard Zig talking, but he said, Kevin said, not if Biden steals it, they would turn the screws up on it if he wins. So, I mean, that's the reason why I'm asking if I'm being too naive about this idea.
Why would he couch everything he wanted to do with COVID, therefore X?
Who, Biden, you mean?
Yeah, Biden. I mean, anything he wants to do, he's just going to say, because COVID, we should do X. And he's going to have everything. But I would say Trump would do that too. Because we had this happen. That's why it's okay for Republicans to sign a big bailout. You know,
look,
because
to Trump's
of what
credit,
just
though,
happened, this is why we're going to have to give away more money in whatever. You get what I'm saying?
No, I hear you. But I will say this much, man. To Trump's credit, as far as because COVID, I mean, for a guy that is labeled as a fascist, I don't quite understand how a fascist doesn't capitalize on a catastrophe to gain more power. Does that make sense to people? Like it blew my mind over the last couple of months here. While the claim against Trump always is that he's the next H-word guy, the guy that was over in Germany for a while, right? The claim against Trump is that he was always just a fascist in rise, that he's riding this populist wave, and as soon as he gets the chance to attain all power in a king-like manner in the executive branch, he would do it. He would sweep it away from us.
He could have totally done it too.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, but he just hasn't done it. And not only has he not done that, he's gone the exact opposite direction with his.
You may see a different Trump after he wins.
Okay, well, sure.
It isn't going to be COVID as much, but if Trump wins and they somehow get the House and Senate back, or even have the same setup they have now with a Democratic House and Republican Senate, or vice versa, you're going to see a lot of pressure on these states that have been having the riots all year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The ones who are wanting bailouts.
Yeah.
They'll get them eventually. But what the federal government, or what Donald Trump, and maybe he might convince the Senate to go along with this too, there's going to be major changes in those states. And you will see an increase in power in the federal government no matter what. No matter who becomes president, you're going to see the power of the purse get swung real hard by the administration, which is super weird, but it's because we're in a pandemic, right? Because Congress is going to give the administration access to trillions over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And whoever's driving that ship is going to say, well, you give it out when you do X or you do Y or you do Z, and not before and not after, or whatever. You get what I'm saying? Not before. But that's the COVID, and like you said earlier, move the Overton window on a lot of things, on what is acceptable. And to go with what Richard said, a lot of really weird things happened. There was a great immune response to say some of these things are not okay, even during a pandemic, and that's good. But what we'll have left over from it is enough to cause trouble.
Yeah,
no matter how the Congress is set up, Senate or the president, for sure.
Well, I'm telling you, man, to end the show here today, because I know we're literally 30 minutes past at this point. I just kept going because we got so many people in here. The conversation's still rocking in Facebook over here as well. Part of the reason why we did the theme for today's show with Lesson in Humility, part of it had to do with the Supreme Court stuff. Part of it also has to do with what's going on right now. And I'm not just saying that it's the people that have lesson in humility. Most importantly, I believe it should be the legislation, the legislators, the people in power that should at some point have a lesson in humility here. I just don't know if they're seeing it that way. Right? I just don't know if they're really understanding what we try and pitch in this program all the time is that community solves problems. And the experiment that we're doing here is meant to be at a small localized level. You get with your friends, you get with your family, you decide what's right for you and yours. And then a very small microcosm of that is branched outwards. And as you branch outwards, you have fewer and fewer powers delegated, right? You have less and less power as you branch outward until you eventually get to the federal government in particular that's supposed to have arguably the most limited power. Now, the power that they can do a lot of stuff, but they're certainly not supposed to be as overarching as they currently are. It could be a healthy thing for everybody to consider to take it that way, right? I think it'd be a healthy thing for people to understand, like in Tennessee here, if you're a Republican, you probably have more in common with the Democrat living next door to you than a Republican living in California. I know we say that a lot in this program, but have you reached out? Have you had those conversations? Have you tried to break down those walls? Have you been vulnerable during this particular time period with your political ideology, with your philosophy, with your religion? Have you been vulnerable to open up to criticism? Have you been trying to actively make inroads with people that you disagree with? Right? A lot of this stuff, that's basically what all this stuff boils down to me. You see someone crying on TikTok, okay? Some girl that's afraid that her fundamental rights are going to be lost because a different Supreme Court justice is in there. Are you looking at that situation to say, hey, we just own the libs? Or are you trying to be a more enlightened human being and say, here's a coaching moment, here's a teaching moment, here's something that we can grow together in? Here, let me explain to you this grand experiment that we're doing in this place called America and how you can make change as well. Hey, you don't need to be fearful. And we can understand that we're all in this big ride together here, right? That's what we do at Real News. We try and grow with each other in the true classical sense of the word, that through trial and struggle, you can make a little bit of order out of that chaos, yeah? Become friends with each other. 10:33, in and a little bit late this morning. My name is Mr. Henry for Zig and David Tyne Thompson. We're out. Love y'all.